Planning Commission for Tuesday, July 27th. Those in the back could take a seat. That would be good. So we will start with the roll call, please. Here.
Paul Sprainer.
Present.
Brian Hilton.
Present.
Rich Schellenberger. Mike Wade. Conway. Debbie Mevett.
Here. Good, just enough for quorum. So if everybody's had a chance to look at the agenda for tonight's meeting, are there any questions or concerns? If not, I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
I second.
Toby? Yeah. We have motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, approval of the draft minutes from the June 22nd meeting. Any questions or concerns with the minutes?
No.
If there are none, I would move that we approve the minutes as presented.
I second.
Well, we got all kinds.
Either or.
Brian Shelton, yeah. We have motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Ryan, any communications? Okay, so we're going to move on to the first public hearing. If you're here to speak on any item, there will come a point when we'll open up the public hearing. That's your opportunity to come to the podium, tell us who you are and what your address is if you want to speak on an item. So this is a review of SD 2021-01, application of Dill Hill LLC pursuant to section 160407, who is petitioning for approval of a final revised plat for the lot located east of Seneca and northeast of Lane, currently addressed as 2216 East Ford Street in Valley Center. Ryan, you can have at it.
Awesome. Well, good evening, everyone. This should look familiar. We just, as you'll recall, a couple of months ago, did approve the final plat. What happened is after this went to City Council, before it went to Sedgwick County for filing, the developer realized that there needed to be just a few changes, and those changes have been outlined in my staff report, namely the change from Dill Hill Estates to Cedar Ridge Estates. The name of a few of the streets have been changed accordingly. And then the curve, as you'll remember, the previous plat did include a curve off of the road off of Seneca that has been changed to make it straight. And some of the property boundaries have been changed in a number of the lots. The overall plat will still consist of 27 single-family residential lots. The developer did submit an updated site plan, which has been approved by our city staff review team as well. Of course, the public notice was put in the newspaper, as well as letters out to the surrounding property owners. No one had any issues with this final revised plat. The reason why we can treat this as a revised final plat and not a replat is that it was not submitted to Sedgwick County. So we can treat it as, again, just a final plat and not a replat. City staff does recommend approval of this plat. With us this evening, we have Will Clevenger and Ryan Nett that are involved in this project, and would invite them to speak during the public hearing if they feel so.
Thank you. Ryan, are there any questions from the board members at this time? I think we're on the verge of beating this one to death if we're not careful. So hopefully this is the last one. So it's 7:04 and we'll open up the public hearing. Would the applicant or agent for the applicant like to say anything?
Well, we're happy to be here tonight, and that we've made some real progress with the layout. And Ryan and I are both happy to answer any questions you have, but we're in agreement with staff comments, and we're excited to move forward.
And I was joking about beating it to death. I'm glad you got it the way you want it, so that's good. Okay. Any questions, comments from the board? Thanks, Will. Well, if there are none, 7:05, and we'll close the public hearing. We're required to have a minute, right? All right. Any additional comments? I guess I should have asked if there was anybody else in the public before I close the public hearing, but I assume there's not, so I'm glad I didn't miss that. All right. If there are no other questions or comments, based on city staff recommendations, public comments, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board, I make a motion to approve SD 2021-01.
I second.
Got it. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Good. Thank you, guys. Good luck. Next item is
Sorry, before we move on, I just want to make sure. I do have the Mylar copy, so if I can get your signature after the meeting.
That'd be good.
Thank you, Gary.
The next item is review of RZ 2021-03, application of Jose De La Rosa pursuant to section 1711, who's petitioning for a rezoning of land that is currently zoned C2, which is the city's designation for general business district, to I, which is the city's designation for an industrial district. The lot is currently addressed as 930 South Meridian here in Valley Center. Ryan, you're up.
Great, thank you. So again, this rezoning is for a vacant piece of property. There is nothing on this parcel of land right now. It's just grass. The owners live on the lot immediately to the south at 940 South Meridian. And in recently purchasing this property, they would like to do something with it and are pursuing right now the idea of creating an open air RV storage facility. So no proposed buildings, just a matter of a place where people can come and park their recreational vehicles. Upon review, so with that being the case, the rezoning, this is why that necessitates rezoning, because you cannot do that in C2, but you can do that in industrial zone district. Again, city staff is recommending approval on this, but contingent, as you'll see in my staff report. We do recommend approval contingent on approval of a screening plan. So some kind of fencing, landscaping, whatever that looks like, but a screening plan and an overall development site plan to be submitted by the applicant and then approved by city staff prior to the RV storage facility being created. Again, this would be open air, so no construction of buildings, but just some kind of parking surface for people to park their RVs, but we are recommending approval, again, contingent on that. For those of you that are newer to the board, how the rezonings work is that it comes first before the Planning and Zoning Board. If the Planning and Zoning Board recommends approval of the rezoning, then it goes before City Council with an official rezoning ordinance that changes the zoning of land, in this case from C2 to I, again, industrial. Public notices were submitted in the newspaper as well as to the surrounding property owners. No one submitted anything in writing or phone call or email or dropping by my office. So there's been no public opposition to this application from any of the surrounding property owners. And I would note that this neighborhood, while it is, yes, on the main thoroughfare of Meridian, it is, I consider, a mixed-use area where you have the petroleum terminal to the south, you have the property across the street, which is zoned commercial, and then just to the north, you have the property where the former Leakers building is, where Builders First Source is doing their expansion project, as well as the Unruh office building. So you've got, and as well as single-family homes. So there's a good mix in this neighborhood, and city staff feels that, especially with an appropriate screening plan that we would approve, that this could still look aesthetically pleasing on our main north-south thoroughfare of Meridian. Also included in the staff report is a letter, in your agenda packet, there is a letter from the applicant, and Mr. De La Rosa is with us this evening. I would invite him again to, if he feels so, to speak during the public hearing as well.
Thank you, Ryan. I know you said it, but there was, based on the required notification, there was no feedback from.
That is
adjacent
correct,
property.
yes.
Were all the homeowners noticed?
Yes,
And how were they noticed?
a letter in the mail.
Just a regular mail letter?
Yeah, so how that works is, and this goes for all of our public notices, what we do is I use the addresses that are on the Sedgwick County GIS map, click on each property. Each of those has the physical address as well as a mailing address, and of course, the property owner's name. And so we generate that mailing list and send those letters directly to the owner of the property that has the mailing address.
Any return notices?
Not for this one, no.
Okay.
And then again, what's shown here is some of the surrounding zoning where you have what's in red. The red is C2, purple is industrial, and then the green is RR1, which is our suburban residential district, again, for single family homes. You'll see that this property does, so you've got Meridian on the west, the railroad tracks on the east. I would also note that a large portion of this property is in the special flood hazard area or the Zone AE floodplain. So in order to build anything on this lot, you would need to go through state and local review in order to bring in fill dirt or build it with wet flood proofing, whatever the case may be. So really an open air facility where you're just parking on the you're not building anything, you're just parking recreational vehicles on site is minimal risk in terms of development in the floodplain.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you, Ryan. Any other questions or comments from the board? 7-Eleven will open up the public hearing. Would the applicant like to say anything or anybody in the public like to speak on this item? Now's your opportunity. We have to waste at least a minute, so help yourself.
Hello, I'm Jose de la Rosa, and well, as he speak, what we're trying to do there, we're live just out of that property there. We just bought it, and we thought it was a good idea, you know, easy investment, maybe make a RV something, you know, simple for right now. You know, I don't know. That's what we're planning to do if we can do that.
Sure, thank you. I know there's one over on 69th, and that thing is packed. So there seems to be some demand for it. So
what the idea comes to our mind, it was we bought an RV early this spring, and we tried to find parking space for one, and we couldn't find one. Not here in Maine, not in 69, and just south of us on Meridian, it was full. So we just come with that idea and trying to see we can.
well, good.
That.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you coming in.
Okay.
Anybody else from the public like to speak on this item? If not, at 7:13, we'll close the public hearing. Any discussion from planning commission members? Anybody like to make a motion? I will. Based on the city staff recommendations, public comments, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board, I make a motion to approve RZ 2021-03. And I will add what Ryan had here is with the requirement that a screening plan and overall development site plan be submitted by the applicants for review and approval by the city staff review team before the RV storage area is created.
A second.
Brian? Do you have a motion and a second? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Good, thank you. Thank you for coming in and good luck. So the last public hearing item we have is review of V 2021-02 application of Kyle and Tracy Omo pursuant to City Code 171008, who are petitioning for a rear yard building setback variance of 8 feet to allow for the construction of a building addition to the existing house at 1039 North Windsor in Valley Center. Mr. Schreck.
All right, with us this evening, we do have the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Omo, and as Gary stated, that this is a variance request for the variance on the rear setback. So this property is zoned R1B, which per zoning code, that rear setback is normally 20 feet. Again, this is asking for a variance of 8 feet to allow for that addition. I will note in the staff report that the applicants have included in the staff report, the applicants have submitted a request letter as well as the requested survey done by Mark Savoy, who is a Kansas licensed surveyor. The survey does show the proposed addition on the rear or the west side of the house, and showing that the new rear setback would be 8 feet as opposed to 20. Again, public notice was put in the newspaper, the Ark Valley News, as well as letters sent to the surrounding property owners, and there has been no opposition to this proposed variance request. I'll stand for any questions, and of course would invite the applicants to speak during the public hearing as well.
Thank you, Ryan. Any questions or comments from the board?
No, not yet.
So I think, we've talked about these before on orientation, especially on a corner lot. and you've got to have a back, right, of a house.
Yes.
And
Right.
so,
Yes.
I mean, I think the reason why this works, and we've allowed this in the past, is if you go straight west, everybody else has probably got what would be a 6 foot on their side lot.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And so effectively, it doesn't seem to me that it really creates any harm.
Those corner lots are interesting. Always
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody on a corner kind of gets dinged a little bit on this, actually, I think. So anyway, it's 7:16. We will open up the public hearing. Would the applicants like to say anything? You are welcome to, but you don't have to. Is there anybody else here from the public who would like to speak on this item? Mr. Austin, you don't like to? You want to come up and entertain us till 7:17? All right. We have to keep we have to keep the public hearing open for a minute. So it's now 7:17. We'll close the public hearing. Any more comments from the board? If not, based on city staff recommendations, public comments, and discussion by the Board of Zoning Appeals, I make a motion to approve V 2021-02.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? You're good to go. Good luck. All right, new business.
All right, with us this evening, we have Tim Austin, who is going to present a sketch plat for part of the TIF district. As you'll recall, earlier this year, the city did create and has gotten approval to create a TIF, or a tax increment finance district, that will include the unplatted, or the platted but not undeveloped area of Prairie Lakes, and then the property to the north. And so Prairie Lakes will not it's already platted, and at this time, the developer is not looking at doing a replat. And so the area to the north of Prairie Lakes will be platted for development. Normally with the sketch plat, that is just reviewed by the city staff review team. And then once it gets to the preliminary plat is when it comes before you as the Planning and Zoning Board. Mr. Austin did want to have a discussion with you as the board tonight, just to do a brief presentation and introduction as to what this area to the north of Prairie Lakes could look like. And so I'll turn it over to Tim, and he can explain the project and answer any questions you may have. Again, the next step from here will be the formal submission of the preliminary plat application. So obviously it'll look a little bit more, it'll be more in depth than this. But again, this sketch is just to give an idea of what this area could look like when it comes to the preliminary plat. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thank you, Ryan.
Mr. Chairman and members, thanks for being here. Miss Gary, did you see her purse? It's purple and silver. It was really
Yes,
shiny.
yes, I
She must be a
appreciated
good
that.
K-Stater.
Yes, city administrator showing the colors today too.
Valley Center, because it wasn't
Yeah,
purple
I
and gold.
know, but
Maybe a K-Stater. Okay, so Ryan, thanks for introduction there. Tim Austin with Iron Horse Development. We're the developers for the project that's going to be a tax increment finance district, which is looking at redeveloping the Prairie Lakes addition that's undeveloped, creating a regional detention pond. Are you control maybe? She might pan up there. So looking at creating a regional detention basin just north of there on the vacant quarter section. It's currently in corn right now, pretty good corn. In that 52 acres roughly, creating a regional detention basin. And then further north, using the excavated material to fill in the property and the balance of the property, remove it from the floodplain, and to develop it as mixed use, some commercial development reserve for future development, and at least initially approximately 146 residential lots. One of the things it's pretty typical on sketch plats, your subdivision regs do allow for it, is just as we start down this process of platting property, is just get some feedback on some of the design elements. And so that was kind of my purpose for being here tonight, because the configuration is a little bit different and unusual. I kind of like it, actually. I'm working with an engineering firm out of Omaha, Nebraska on it. So somebody that's not really familiar with the local way we do things, so to speak, but at the same time is bringing a little bit different look to how we do development. And so what Brent has up here right now is the residential plat. North is to 85th there where he's highlighting it. And so you can see it's fairly curvilinear. The orange dash lines are an internal walkway for the residents. So one of the things that the TIF project will look to do is to help create a public bike path and walkway system connecting 77th to 85th Street, roughly along the east line of that drainage ditch. But we also wanted to create for the residents, some opportunity for internal circulation within the subdivision itself, and then connecting it into that regional basin. The regional basin, when it's not fulfilling its purpose as a stormwater detention, will be used as a public park. And so it'll be periodically inundated with water. It might be very frequent, it might be very infrequent, depending on Mother Nature. And so I would imagine that any of the improvements in that park would be what I'd call flood-proof concrete structures, things like that, that would allow it to stay underwater for a few hours or for a day or two, if that's what it ultimately ended up being. But just wanted some feedback, typical layout, things that we consider meeting your design requirements, subdivision regulation requirements for road rights-of-way, looking at access points onto both 85th and then onto Seneca for fire, having secondary points of access. As you can see here on the southeast corner, we have a roundabout, internal roundabout, and to help kind of slow traffic, calm traffic, and for people that are entering into that particular development. You might go back to that very first one of the overall, Brent. There's again a look at it, a little less detail, but just kind of shows you the overall geometrics. You'll notice that there are certain green areas both along the frontage along 85th Street. So one of the things from a design standpoint that we're trying to accommodate is similar to like Fox Ridge, that's over on the west side of Wichita, a little bit of a berm where we can have some landscaping and buffering between the traffic on 85th and the houses that back up to it. But you also see there along the north side, there's some additional green areas. Those are beneficial and I think add a good amenity to homes that back up to those locations. Got a major entrance onto 85th Street, so there's envision we'll have a little island there. Probably won't have a subdivision sign in that location, but mainly just for landscaping. Want to make sure we have good traffic visibility, but we also want it to be a very welcoming place. One of the things that Trails In was kind of the name we selected for the plat, and that came from one of our landscape architects, and he said, Trails In, given the history of Wichita and Sedgwick County and the Chisholm Trail, he thought Trails In really kind of signified a sense of place and coming home. So for people that are at the end of a long day, that Trails In kind of gives that feel to it, and hopefully people will feel that, and we can create a housing addition amenity here that doesn't exist in Valley Center, but would be a really nice, attractive development. Again, if you look through it, the lots are in many cases a little odd in their configuration. I think the smallest lot, at least as it's initially drawn, is about 7,700 square feet, but we'll tweak those numbers and those dimensions as we get into more of the preliminary plat. But really just kind of looking for some feedback on this. One of the things in our TIF presentation and the project plan that we're preparing for the city council is this addition. We'd look at a kind of a target home market in the 350,000 on up range. So maybe a little kind of that middle income, mid higher level income, probably fairly similar to Fiddler's Creek across to the east. And so just again, nice housing product, but really kind of wanted some feedback. And before we kind of jump in and go, 0 to 90 here, I guess, as we go forward on this project, as you guys all know, there's quite a bit of housing demand and the need to get product down into the marketplace. I don't also want to forget about the commercial piece because that's also a component of the development. One of the things, the feedback that we received was the city could use more opportunities for commercial development. And so we set aside that 14 acres. It's a fairly good size for development that could handle more of a regional type grocery store or hardware store with some pad sites that typically would either be fast food or financial institutions or convenience store or something of that nature. And that layout that you see there, that's pretty standard, typical in the marketplace here locally. Show you all day long, all the intersections around Sedgwick County that have that type of configuration. But when we bring it in, obviously the things we'll be looking for is access points, the number of them, how many of them are shared, what are their full movement, left turns, right turns, things of that nature. So with that, I'd be happy to take questions and see if you guys have any thoughts or need more information.
Thanks, Tim. I had seen you talk about this at the city council meeting, but not quite to this detail. So it's exciting to see. And you know, and I know how I would tell you, I'm kind of interested to see how this plays out. And I know you don't know what'll go on the commercial yet, but I've been on this planning commission long enough that I was here when we did the doctor's office across the street here, Dr. Horn's office on the northwest corner. It was standing room only in here. The people did not want the doctor's office. And they were concerned about traffic and everything else. I'm not telling you that I will just be interested to see how the public responds to this. And I don't even know, Ryan, at what point in time on something like this, if they're really, I mean, what level of public input is there? Just out of curiosity.
So there'll be a few different layers of review. Of course, there'll be the preliminary plat and the final plat. Those will be two separate meetings, as well as a rezoning. So right now, all of this land is zoned A1. When we get to the final plat, we'll do a rezoning with it to rezone the appropriate section into appropriate zoning. So whether that's, I'm assuming that'll probably be C2, the residential would be either R1B or R1A. So we'll do that rezoning. And so both the preliminary plat, the platting and the rezoning, those will all require public notice letters as well as public notice in the newspaper. Standard process. So the public will be aware in the surrounding area that this is going on and when the public hearings will be held before this board. So that will do that. Now, in conjunction with the TIF district, there will also be a project plan that will at some point be presented. That'll be presented to this board, the planning and zoning board, as well as city council. So that will come up here sometime in the near future as well.
And thank you. I just want everybody here to hear that. And I'm not trying to jump ahead or assume that I think this is a great plan. I think it's a great thing to do. That I've been in Valley Center for 15 years now and nothing's happened there. And needless to say, I think it's going to help, I would assume, Tim, with probably still some flooding issues within Prairie Lakes with building that regional detention area, right?
Correct.
Go ahead, Will.
One of the things that I would like to see you think about, and that is how you're going to be screening 85th Street. Because you got houses backing up to 85th Street. The berming is great, but enough of a setback where you can do some vegetation and you can screen that from backyards. Because 85th Street is a key entrance to the city. It's a thoroughfare of the city, and the cosmetics on that's pretty important. So anything you can do in that, and when you start getting closer to that site plan, that make that a major consideration in terms of, and the same thing with commercial. If you're going to have some commercial buildings, so we get the back of commercial buildings backing up to 85th Street, same issue. So 85th Street's pretty important to the city. And so I would say that that's preliminarily something we want to do when you finally come up to the final housing, number of lots you're going to set. Add enough square footage to accomplish that. And the same thing, it's really critical on because the buildings are going to be a little bit higher on the commercial. And sometimes there's going to be dumpsters in the back. There's going to be that sort of thing. And we want to see the 85th Street protected.
Okay. And that's, those are valid comments. We're pretty typical, used to dealing with those.
You
making
bet.
Sure that
Oh,
we
yeah,
have
you're
that
going to see those any place you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, but I always appreciate those comments. I know that A-Fifth is an important entryway.
So I have one more question, and I have to ask this question, and I don't know what the current traffic counts are, and this isn't going to generate a ton of traffic, but I assume that TIF funding could be used for turn lanes, or at least into one major entrance. I don't know if there's space, and I don't know if there's been consideration for that or not.
That's one of the things that I think when we bring in the plat that we'll have to start looking at is those traffic movements and those guarantees. We have not asked for the guarantees for improvements that were specific to the development. So the TIF money is not, isn't being requested to pay for like streets and water and sewer.
Right.
And it's really, from our standpoint, the limiting factor on the TIF is to pay for the regional detention base. And one of the things you mentioned that was important, and for the benefit of the other council members here, Plan Commission members, the regional basins right now, based on our flood studies, will actually it looks like it's going to drop the base flood elevation by about 2 feet. So it will have broader improvement, not only for Prairie Lakes, but for this property, for the properties downstream, down the hill, so to speak, from this property. And also, like your plat there with Mr. Net, that your first plat, that hydraulic grade line can get lowered going across Seneca and actually help
Yeah.
lower that flood elevation going upstream and help that development out as well. So but that's all we needed. And from when I first started looking at, and for the Plan Commission who don't know me, I'm up until October last year, I was a consulting engineer and worked with Gary over the years on a number of projects. But when I first started looking at this, I was working for a firm, and it was brought to me, and somebody says, how do we solve the problems with this subdivision here with Prairie Lakes? Because it's just been stigmatized because of a past flooding event. It's got some really high development cost. And so looking at it at the time, I didn't really have an answer. And then just about the time I had started leaving to change jobs, it occurred to me, way to fund it, the mechanisms that made a workable solution both for the community and for the private landowners and a developer. And ultimately we stepped into that role of being the developer. So that regional pond is really the only thing that we're looking at from the development side to do it. Now, I mentioned there's some park improvements or some bike lane improvements or maybe some road improvements on Seneca. Ultimately, how that plays out remains to be seen. But from a development standpoint, it's really just creating the volume, the excavated volume, and moving dirt work.
I think that makes sense, because without that, the rest of this isn't going to be developed. I should back up a minute, and I shouldn't have qualified my question using the TIF part. Regardless, obviously at some point in time, you do a traffic impact study and make sure that whether or not turn lanes are needed
Right.
to the major entrances, right?
Right.
I mean, it's all relative, but 85th Street is fairly busy during the peak hours. That's the only reason why I asked. This is a pretty sizable development.
Yeah, part of my reason for here is, and I do appreciate the feedback. The difficulty is I can't really come in for the zoning because I don't have good legal descriptions right now to zone the property that needs to be zoned for the residential. So, assuming that those look good, I can make some general assumptions and bring in a zoning request and start moving forward with the plat. So everything kind of comes in a certain order. The other thing that I'm fighting is, I've got borders on all four sides. So I'm also trying to achieve a certain volume for that regional detention as well.
Right.
So I'm fighting a lot of different parameters here. And right now, with that configuration the way it is, if we don't move it too much, it looks like I can pretty well achieve what we thought we could, which was the broad regional detention, creating enough value to pay for the TIF, and then we can go forward on it.
I think you're onto something. I mean, it's not going to happen without that. So just be
That's-
prepared. I won't belabor it, but just be prepared. The traffic impact study for the doctor's office said it was going to add 30 to 40 vehicles per day. And there were people here that wanted that deal killed for that reason,
Yeah.
30 to 40 alone. So just, and who knows?
Yeah. Change is hard sometimes.
It is. I think this is and there's such a demand for housing. And I think people that want to stay in Valley Center come to Valley Center. It makes a lot of sense.
And to be honest, I mean, the way, as Gary knows, historically, I've done a lot more commercial than I've done residential. And, the old adage is commercial follows rooftops. And so when we put together kind of working with the city staff and looking at the financial model of the TIF, the commercial we really don't see being developed for, a period of up to maybe 5 years and fully developed for maybe as long as 15. But you get rooftops in there and then commercial will come in and we'll start having the density and the demand. So, but as you know, and I know from our past experiences, we got to plan for the future too. We can't wait till we get there to try to figure out problems. We try to anticipate them as best we can.
Have you ever thought about a dual? That means 2 retention detention areas for the water, and it was move one further north, and then have it step down to your main detention channel.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we started looking at, and that question about the kind of the on-site detention is looking at the overall basin. So we've engaged a company called Wood Engineering. They're a large international company, and there was a flood study done on this tributary, and I don't know if any of you guys, I'm sure Gary was, that was done in 2016 by a company called AMEC, which Wood acquired. And they looked at the tributary going north on the Chisholm and that west branch, and then they looked at the Trails View going northeast, and their drainage basins are roughly about the same size. About, if memory serves me correct, they're both about 10 square miles.
Right.
And so what they started looking at is where, what we call it from an engineering, when's the peak flow coming, and this convergence that's right there at the southwest of the property. From an engineering standpoint, sometimes when we think about detentions, do we want to hold water and then add to that peak when we really don't want to add to that peak, or do we want to let the water of this get out before the peak gets down to here?
Yeah,
So-
no, I'm familiar with that. I'm just saying that if it has a step basins, sometimes it's given the fact that we have the majority of the time we're sort of running dry, then we have these monsoons that it's the 100-year that's coming, or the 50-year that's going to be the challenge.
That's you actually, when you were talking, I thought, well, that'd be kind of interesting if we did a C-shaped around it,
Right.
put along 85th and then
Yeah.
just kind of have. So yeah, we might play with that just a little bit and see.
Yeah. 'Cause I think there's you have enough land area, there's a lot of opportunities to create something pretty, shall we say, innovative in today's world.
Yeah. The other thing about something like that, and the thought process or the proposal is that ultimately we deed that land would be deeded over to the city after the excavation as a detention pond, but as a public park. And so, it gets into questions of maintenance and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to leave anything that's more difficult for them to maintain.
Right.
Sometime, so I guess, I'm open to entertain those kind of ideas. I'd obviously want to talk to the manager and his staff to see if that's something that they would like as well.
I mean,
we can visit that.
if you look what Wilson accomplished all those years ago in East Wichita, it was pretty amazing what he was able to accomplish, and also create a water feature for the commercial.
Right.
And I know that's just a little smaller parcel than that, but there may be some opportunities to create especially if there's going to be restaurants. If you create a little water feature somehow adjacent to your commercial, that could be, even if it's just one end of the commercial for a prime location for a restaurant. There's just different thoughts but I mean, they did a marvelous job on that one, and you got an opportunity, I think, to do that at a much smaller scale here in Valley.
Thank you.
Help me. Did you say your retention pond's primarily going to be in what we see as Reserve A?
Yeah, so Reserve A and Reserve B are, as are shown there, those are currently part of the private property. And in that kind of that area between there where the 5198 is, that's actually county right of way. That's the county condemned for the Wichita Valley Center floodway. So that's actually county property. It's about 9.5 acres roughly.
Right.
And one of the thought processes and is that the county might, convey that over to the city as well. And just so that the entirety of Reserve A, Reserve B, and that part that's county would all just be one city park and under city control and maintenance.
Yeah, that would be a,
But you're talking about the entire 52 acres, which is Reserve A and B as being the detention area.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
that,
Yeah. So kind of, I guess in engineering terms, it right now, if you look at floodplain as being storage volume, the 100-year floodplain, it provides about 90 acre feet of storage in that location. And our goal is to increase that to around 220 acre feet of storage. So basically more than double it.
That's good.
The 1.5 times, I guess.
right.
And like I said, it would, one of the things that was kind of interesting that, just kind of the history of drainage in that area was prior to the last updates of the 2016 FEMA flood maps for Sedgwick County, this area didn't have floodplain on it. And so the AMEX study established what the floodplain was, and that was what was used to establish the FEMA flood maps from 2016. So, Prairie Lakes, I don't know how all that litigation on that all settled out at the time, but and it really doesn't matter. But the people that had built there originally, they weren't, there wasn't floodplain. And one of the downsides from the FEMA flood program is people who aren't in the floodplain don't believe they'll ever flood. And as engineers, we know that that's not necessarily the case. So I live on top of a hill, and usually, but not right now. So.
Well, thanks for presenting this. I think it's a good plan. I think it's interesting to me that the city council and the city is willing to look at this as TIF funding. I'll be excited to see how that goes. If that's the way it can make it work, it's even better. Otherwise, I think it'll be another 15 years and nothing will still have happened here.
They're very, very innovative, I think.
Any questions, comments, anything to add? So we'll get to see this again.
Yep.
For various parts of it.
Multiple times, yeah.
You'll see it with the project plan.
Right.
And then you'll see the preliminary plat and then the final plat.
Right.
And when you see the final plat, you'll also have the rezoning as well to review. Because as Tim mentioned, with the final plat, we'll have the legal description. So with the rezoning, we'll look at that as one application. So the residential section would be, let's say, block A, lots 1 through 46, whatever the case may be.
Right.
Would be zoned this, and then appropriately for the other sections as well. So you'll see this, yeah, you'll definitely be seeing this again. But what would be nice is that the preliminary plat will include the topography. So you'll see where this basin is actually going to be, through topography on the preliminary plat.
Oh, good.
Will we need to show proposed final contours on that too for the basin, or we just, okay.
So, what I would suggest is, since the work won't be done yet, that we approve the preliminary plat with the final
Okay.
topography as to what it
Okay.
shows.
It's no pun intended, it's a little fluid still, so we're still, kind of working through some deals. So again, just kind of courting a lot of parameters
Yeah.
to get this.
And I think what Brent was showing earlier is on Seneca. Do you still have that, Brent? Absolutely. Okay. I think what Brent was trying to show everyone is that we are in the process of at some point in the future, completely redoing Seneca. We are working on WAMPO funding right now, trying to get some funding for that. But this is just a preliminary outlook of what that could look like in the future. North is
To the right.
side of the screen. South is on the left. And so where you see where it says bridge replacement, that's where that section of what's flood control right now would connect. South or to the opposite. part of the Ford Street property, part of the Ford Street project. So that's shown there as well.
That realignment part's going to happen with that project, right?
Yeah.
With
only
Ford
that
Street?
one, correct, Brett? Only that one.
Yeah, just to the point where I would imagine.
Yeah, but that'll be realigned to be an actual four-way intersection as opposed to where it's skewed.
Right.
So that'll be done sometime next year. And again, the realignment will be next year. So that section, what you see there on the left side of the screen, that will be part of what started now as the Ford Street.
Right. That's cool to see. Good. I hope that works out to get some other funding.
And cost share, remember. Cost share, we're going to continue to apply.
Yes.
Cost share is received really well if there's private funding from developers. That's what KDOT really likes. I'm just telling you from our experience in Wichita that they really go after that while the developer's still here in the room.
Yes, and actually, this last application that we submitted this past spring, we actually offered 50-50% match, of course, with the TIF funding coming up with the city's 50%. Unfortunately, I'm sure you're aware, Mr. Chairman, that whenever KDOT's looking at that, they always look at the region and what projects that KDOT's awarding out of that pot of money for the cost share in the region. So unfortunately, some of our neighboring communities have gotten some of those projects, which are fantastic. They benefit the entire region, but that does bump down some of our projects. We will still continue to apply every single application, which is there's 2 each year. And so this fall we'll be applying once again, and next spring, and then fall, and then spring, and until they finally get rid of me some way by awarding it. Right, Paul? I did want to touch base real quick because I do live in Fiddler's Creek, and I've been actually pleasantly surprised with my neighbors. So during one of our HOA board meetings, actually discussed the Iron Horse development and kind of wanted to gauge their input when it came to the commercial being on that hard corner so close to us. And all of them were in support of it. I didn't hear any negativity or any thoughts whatsoever of negative traffic flow or businesses or anything. I was shocked because I always hear negative when it comes to any development by a residential that's commercial. Even a week and a half ago during one of our social get-togethers for the HOA, people that weren't at the board meeting, I pulled them aside and asked each one, hey, what do you think about this? And no one had any negative thoughts on the commercial. All they saw was their property values increasing. So that was a surprise to me because that's not typically how it works.
No,
to be honest with you, it's really not.
No.
But I think that those residents in our community, they see the need and the demand for additional commercial space and lots. Right now, today, if somebody came and wanted to build a Dillon's or an Aldi's or anything, we do not have any ground shovel ready that's zoned for it, that's lot splitted for it, that is absolutely shovel ready today. We don't have any inside of Valley Center. So as soon as it's there, I guarantee it won't be 5 years. Any questions for me?
No, hey, thanks. And that's good to hear. Sure, that's really good to hear. Everybody that was here for the doctor's office lived in Hilltop, for what it's worth.
That's Paul's area.
Do you live up there?
I heard about it.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to beat that up. I was just blown away at how much concern there was, and that's all I could think of when I saw this development. Wow, I wonder what they're going to say now. I mean, I was surprised by that for a doctor's office, but we'll see what happens.
Well, I think the closer it looks to Fiddler's Creek, I think there's going to be the acceptance level will be high. If the project is going to end up being like so much of the stuff is being built now, I think that's when the pushback's going to come. But the closer you can have it look almost like an extension of Fiddler's, plus some upscale retail in that area, the commercial. could be an additive to the community, as long as you're screening 85th and, planning your water features and thinking about what, the opportunities are, because obviously you're going to be in floodplain, but, yeah, no, it's definitely has potential. I agree with everything said here, that the Valley Center is going to grow. It's just how it grows and the quality in which it grows. That's going to set it apart from HI and some of the surrounding areas, because it's got that opportunity. And so that would be your challenge, is to make that a landmark project.
Thank you.
And Brent, I would tell you, we've worn people down before on grant applications, so don't give up. At some point in time, they might just give you money so you quit applying. Whatever it takes.
And to be frank, I mean, that getting that bridge replaced is really instrumental, because it's a choke point for the water.
Yeah,
So we got to get that waterway opened up, because the 2008 flood overtopped Seneca. It backed up water there, and it backed up to where it crossed Seneca. So one of the goals is getting that waterway opened up underneath that bridge, so that water gets funneled into that detention basin instead of overtopping and going cross land. So we're very supportive of their efforts, and we'll do whatever we need to do. Call Washington, call the president, tell him to write a grant for it or whatever. So
You don't think, I remember, I'm one last question, sorry, now you brought that up. I think when you talked to the city council about this, that was mentioned as being hopeful of being part of this project, but is that probably not looking too likely? That maybe, and don't let me put words in anybody's mouth, what I thought I heard was something that maybe even the TIF funds could help with that bridge. Is that possible?
Yeah, and that was part of our initial proposal, and I think we're open to doing that. The question is if they can replace the bridge with the overall road improvements, and that's only a year or two lag, that's one thing. But if the road improvements don't happen for 10 years, then, is there an interim step that we need to do?
Sure.
Or, it's like, maybe you drop a box structure in there to increase some waterway opening, or maybe you go underneath the channel cross section and you put gabion walls or something, so you open that, more of a square instead of that trapezoidal section underneath. I think those are things that, we'll have to evaluate as we go forward here.
I was just curious. That it just made me, sorry, I didn't mean to get sidetracked.
No, that's a great question, because like I said, there's a lot of moving parts, and I don't want to be the developer says we fixed everything and then all of a sudden have a big rainfall event and we didn't fix it. So want to make sure that, we're doing everything we can to address the drainage.
Actually, for city staff, that intersection where there's going to be some traffic in the morning and the afternoon might be a location for a roundabout to move it, to move that traffic, especially during light periods, so that it's easier for, as those are worked pretty well. Maybe there may be the land there for that, and create an architectural feature, and boom, done. And no signal record, because there's going to be pressure for a signal at some point. That's what always comes next, and then of course it's not designed quite for it, and then it becomes another stop. Yeah. Anyway, a thought.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate
Thank you.
your time.
Look forward to seeing you guys in the coming months.
Yeah, we'll see you again. Thanks, Tim.
And you, Mr.
Yes, sir. I'll see you around. Okay, any old or unfinished business?
Wow.
Any items by planning commissioners?
I did have a couple items from staff.
Oh, sorry, didn't mean to skip that. So what about,
First, just wanted
there's
to
too
make sure-
many different ones, Ryan, sorry.
Okay, all right, Gary. I just want to make sure that everyone did see up on the roster, we do have these amazing Valley Center pens. Please feel free to take one. If you don't see one, get with Brent, he'll get you one. And take one of the.
Oh, there's some right here.
It's a nice pen, thank you.
All right, so more than one, so if you're feeling,
Right.
take what you like. That's a new marketing aspect we have now. And then also, I just want to let everyone know that the deadline has passed for the August planning and zoning board meeting. We've received no applications, so we will not have a board meeting in August. So you can clear that day off of your calendar and enjoy.
Wow.
It will not be in August.
Got it. Thank you. Any items from planning commissioners? Anything to add?
The only thing that I'd like to add is that when you were gone and I had to come, I had, just so that everybody here knows, I drove all night to get here. So that's why I was a little bit rummy when I got here. I was wasted. But I literally drove all night to make sure we made the meeting.
Well,
And I was just beat.
The vice chair did a fine job.
I appreciate you
No.
covering, and I really appreciate it now. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. But I was just a little bit off my game a little bit when I came stumbling in here. So, but yeah, it was good. It was good.
Well, I'm sure
Always
you
there to help.
exceeded the norm, so yeah, I bet you did great.
Dedication.
Well, if there's no other items, I would move that we adjourn. There is a second.
Their second is here.
All second, whoever, yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I assume there's no opposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you guys for being here. We were close to not having a quorum. And that's not good because the people that were here, we don't want to hold them up, so.